the micro.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Why did you? Yeah, issue.
Okay.
I'm gonna get you like my sister.
We are live. Welcome back, Shophar and Kirti, and everyone watching to Goddess Vibrations, the Spiritual Sexual Empowerment Show. This is our season finale. We like to keep these juicy. It's the last time you'll see us here until usually come back in August, late August, but we got to take, we got to take the summer off to enjoy the May gray and the June gloom. It's very, very gloomy over here in Carlsbad the last couple of days, and I realize that I am definitely solar powered, and I'm already hatching escape plans. But in all seriousness, it's an opportunity for us to get out and enjoy, the beach, the weather, the summer, and stay tuned until the end of this episode because Kirti and Shophar and I are planning something in person in the San Diego area for all of you to come and meet us and work with us, play with us, like just get together and build community. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later, hopefully, if we have time. We have a lot to cover though, because we are talking about the shadow of sex, S.E.X, as Shophar would say, sensual emotional exchange.
Yeah.
And that title, The Shadow of Sex, came from our dear friend Maya when we were brainstorming. And she's like, why don't you just call it The Shadow of Sex? Oh, wow. Thank you, Maya.
Exactly.
So here we are. And so when we were chatting about that, and first of all, why don't you guys introduce yourself? Because I know people that watch the show regularly know who you are because you've been here before, but we're always evolving. So how would you introduce yourself?
Well, my name is Kirti, and I am with They'll Say Culture, and it means heart-based culture. And I do movement and embodiment practices to help us fall in love with ourselves and attract the partnerships of our dreams. That feels good today.
Yeah.
I like it. Sign me up.
Your turn.
And I'm Shophar. And, like Kirti said, we do coaching, intimacy coaching for couples. And then myself, I just like to say that I call myself a breath poet. So I use Qigong, or what I like to call breath poetry, and help people get their inhale and their exhale to rhyme.
I love it. Inhale and exhale to rhyme. So yeah, what we're all doing, all three of us do, is help people heal through our various talents, arts, and hearts. Healing the heart.
What about you, Natasha? Tell us about you.
I am a mind body health consultant, former therapist. I say former because no, I do not do psychotherapy, and no, I'm not taking psychotherapy clients. I'm licensed still, but I'm working a much bigger paradigm than that. With nutrition and sexuality and relationships and all these things that I've been on the personal and professional path with for the last 22 years. So that's who I am.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So I love that. And I always say, to people when I describe this podcast, and I've said it to you before, Kirti, that I'm the mind and you're the body, but of course I'm also the body and you're also the mind. So we have that playground, that overlap. And then Shophar is the spirit for sure in this trio. And also we all are, very spiritually aligned. But we have our certain zones of genius, or our primary, what I guess leads maybe in our work. And so that's what I love about collaborating with you. And I know, Shophar, you're big on the nutrition piece too. So we have that in common with kind of trying to avoid sugar. And of course, it's summertime. So now I'm like off the sugar. I'm 1 week in, although I did have a cocktail with dinner last night because it was a fancy dinner. And it's hard to resist a Mai Tai, but back on it today. We can have those little treats when you're doing it all summer. Yeah. So, and I guess the other thing that we all talk a lot about is sex, sensuality, sexuality. It was my PhD dissertation topic, the integration of spirituality and sexuality. Kirti and I talk a lot about the female perspective of sensuality and sexual expression, and Shophar, you do too, really, because you're speaking for, I'd say the divine masculine and the masculine perspective in your journey, but you're also very knowledgeable and holding space for that female perspective, and you've had some pretty incredible mentors that have helped you to do that too. So I learned from you all the time just by you sharing things that you've learned and things that you've experienced. So this is an opportunity to talk about what sex isn't, I guess, or what sensual emotional exchange isn't, right? And there's so much of the isn't in our culture. So it can be so bad sometimes that the beautiful work that we do gets lumped in with that kind of dirty, seedy stuff that's out there, and it's unfortunate. And so you two have already left Instagram partly because of that, because you're tired of getting censored and banned and whatever else. I'm still hanging in there having to censor and edit my words, and people are coming to us from all different situations. Some are needing sexual healing, had sexual trauma. Some are just caught up in a subconscious patriarchal culture, and they don't realize what they're actually promoting. And we're here to help people have that intimacy. So when Maya said, how about talking about the shadow of sex? What was the first thing that you thought of, or what came to mind as far as what needed to be addressed? Because I have a couple things that have been my bones to pick, I guess, lately, or there's those little buttons, and sometimes they get pushed, and there's a couple that are maybe getting pushed these days.
How about you? What would you say?
She asked you.
She asked
I asked you both. Yeah.
Right. See. Well, I can see. So she wants me to lead on this one, because I know she's going to finish it off real nice for you.
She handed the assist.
Yeah, give her the assist. So I would say what comes to mind, Natasha, is I feel like S.E.X, Sensual Emotional Exchange. That's kind of like when you talk about Surya or Ra or the sun, the soul. That is a powerful expression. And what we've been doing on this planet for a while now is just a shadow that's casted from that. Still not, it still has elements of the natural or whatever in it, but it's not to the level or the brilliance that it could be if we were to step back into sensual, emotional, and the exchange being what? The awareness with the breath with the awareness. That's the X factor that takes everything, it appreciates and makes everything go up.
Shophar, if you didn't come across Nityama or Master Yao or Sasha Cobra and these folks that you talk about quite a bit, where would you be right now as in your relationship with sex, women?
Let's search in the multiverse, because if you're talking about if I was having to come up in this shit that's out here right now, yeah, it would not be good, because with virtual porn and all this other stuff that the kids having stuff available right here on the phones all the time, so that would be ugly if we were talking about in a alternate or parallel universe right now where I'm coming up in this. If we were to talk about still be 45 years, I'm 45 years old, but having not had them in my life, still wouldn't be pretty. Because I wasn't on a good trajectory actually without them. My biggest thing when I met them, it was to step into embracing. I had religious influence that made me dumb down and feel guilty and shameful about my primal instincts and desires and wants. And so they actually helped me step into that. And so many beautiful and powerful things happen from there. So I don't know. It doesn't look too good if in that alternate universe or that other, I wouldn't even be Shophar, I'd still be Reggie. So
Reggie of the multiverse. Okay.
yeah, you're right.
Well, Kirti, you have a fascinating story with having kind of like a Kundalini pop after a spinal injury, after a surfing accident as a teenager. And I imagine that was a big piece of your interest, maybe in sexuality and sexual energy, but maybe, you know, where were you, where was your entry point, I guess, into this work personally and professionally?
Oh, well, I think professionally, definitely Shophar. You know, Shophar was the first place where I felt safe to talk about it and like see it as a powerful thing that needs to be shared. And he encouraged me to talk more about the things that we would share with each other, or things that I, you know, had been thinking about or doing. My access has always been through the arts. You know, so as a dancer, a classical Indian dancer, Odissi, the dance that I did was very much rooted in ancient, you know, arts traditions that extend into the times of the Kama Sutra. And a lot of the positions and the postures and the stories that we say, you can see those stories etched in the stones, you know, of those dancers that we see, those famous pictures of those dancing sculptures of women. So it's kind of always just been in my field. And growing up, my father has always had paintings of those women and that type of classical Indian art around the house, and always grew up in a very artistic and open home in terms of the artistic sensuality. Now, you know, bringing that into like the high school girl having a boyfriend, not so much, you know, being first generation American, wanting to go to prom and like have all these American experiences, kind of a challenge. So I think my entryway was out of repression, honestly. It was like, what was a no? And so I constantly had to adapt to no's and try to find ways of finding joy and bliss in, you know, having to live somewhat of a restricted lifestyle. And then my brother gave me a book called Tao of Sexology, you know, when he entered college, and he had a girlfriend. And I think he really quickly realized, like, wow, I have a younger sister, like she's going to be going through this as well. And yeah, I think when I was in high school or graduating high school, he passed the book down to me and was like, you know, if you never have the conversation, just read this book, you know. And I think that was a pretty good book to pass down to me. So that started sparking my interest. And then my high school sweetheart, we didn't ever engage in intercourse. And so it was a very tantric relationship where we did lots of other things. We spent lots of good time together. We were very intimate in other ways, but we never had that different flavor of the relationship. And for me, the shadow of sex is actually the attachment that I created outside, looking outside of myself for that source of pleasure. Once I, you know, had genital-based sex, you know, intercourse for the first time. And that's a shadow that I've been working through, you know, since that time, since 19, you know, for me.
May our daughters and this generation avoid that, you know, that hole, I think, that we probably all stepped into as young women, is thinking that it was outside of us and not abundantly flowing. And isn't it funny that we think it's outside of us, and yet there's a whole industry built on like child porn, because it's such a radiance that comes out of that, you know, that coming of age, and that just coming into your power there, and how that's turned into something, you know, evil and whatever else. But yeah, it definitely something inside of us. And I love that you brought that up, is that, you know, that it definitely is inside of us. And then even referring to your high school sweetheart as a tantric relationship, because it is the emotional connection and the energetic connection and all of that before we get into that pheromone, you know, overload, I guess, of what happens when we start unlocking all of those sexual hormones and feelings, which is wonderful. It's wonderful, but it's so much bigger than that, right? It's just so much bigger than that. So I guess that kind of leads to what I'm thinking of as the shadows. I've kind of been, after talking to Master Yao, I've been diving into more of your episode, Shophar, with him over the years, and hearing a little bit more of his perspectives on things. And he did mention, I think it was in your episode on awakening the divine masculine, he was talking about how women serve their families, women serve the world, women serve everyone. And so it's her man's job to serve her, because she needs to be served so that she can, you know, keep going and do what a woman does so well. And I think the shadow of sex is that doesn't come through. It like in this culture, it's more like, what can I get from her? Can I get to first base? Can I get to second base? Can I get to third base? Maybe she'll make me dinner. Maybe she'll look good on my arm. Maybe she can be one of my 15 women that I'm having a rotation. But there's not so much of this culture of, wow, what can I be to her? You know, or what can I, like, feeling powerful because of what you give to her that she then can give to the world. And I feel like that is mostly missing even in grown men. Not to say there aren't good men who understand that and do that. I just posted an example of, what is his name? Boris K. I don't know his Instagram account. He's an actor. You guys know.
Boris Cujo, something like.
Yeah. And his wife, I think they've been married for like 17 years. And so he was just like singing her praises today. And so I reposted that as an example. But, and so what happens instead is we get caught up in the pheromonal, hormonal, dopamine, you know, high of the sex, and not the S.E.X, but the sex. And another thing Master Yao was talking about, which I thought was really fascinating in another episode, a different episode that you guys did, was that porn and drugs like weed are the biggest blockers right now to true intimacy of this current day culture, because it's numbing and avoiding, and it's blocking that like true intimacy. And I thought about it and I thought, wow, that's pretty profound. And yet it seems like, especially after the pandemic, those things have blown up even bigger, right? As like coping. And now I just had a dinner last night with my USANA team, and one of the ladies on the team is also a hypnotherapist and a psychotherapist, but she can prescribe medication, and she's like, I think she's got a psychiatric nursing background or something too. But she was saying that it is so dangerous for people, and they can test it in your DNA, if you have a propensity towards schizophrenia. And you could just smoke weed in the wrong potency once or twice, and you can turn on schizophrenia, and it can't be turned off, and you're now on medication for life. And how it just cracks some people are more vulnerable, and it just kind of cracks them open, right, to this. Now they're hearing voices, and they're having these paranoid things or whatever. But I think a lot of people, it's been marketed now as something natural and something of the earth, which it obviously is, but not in its pornified form, which is what we've done with sex. You know, we have this pornified form of sex, and that's what's mass consumption, and it sells, and we want to like have it be, oh, it's a healthy natural thing, and take its culturally appropriate its good foundations and its good reputation and where it came from, and then use it to disconnect or to numb out or to actually feed an addiction which is, you know, Gabor Mate, Dr. Gabor Mate calls it, it's an addiction. It's just a disconnection. Addiction, all it is a disconnection from humanity, from other humans. And so we fill it with a substance or a behavior, right?
Mm-hmm. I can see that.
So those are the things that have been coming up for me. The shadow sides, I think, of sex, the porn, the numbing out. I've never been a big fan of numbing out. I like the natural highs. I know you guys do too. You're constantly dancing and trancing and creating music and doing channeling all kinds of cool things. I'm definitely more into that. And also on that note, there's a whole spiritual community that is very diverse, and everybody's at a different stage of the growth in the spiritual community. And then there's this idea, I think, where the polarity conversation, which comes out of Tantra, goes a little too far. And instead of it being like talking about attraction and magnetics and all of that, now it's putting people into boxes, like you need to be more feminine or you need to be more masculine. And it's this, and especially in a world where women are finally like liberating and breaking through ceilings and opening cages, here comes this spiritual conversation about, well, you need to be softer, or you need to be more feminine, or, as Kirti would say, more Oshun, that sort of thing of the goddess, and not really understanding it's the same old bullshit, because she's this bigger energy with a diamond with multiple facets. And what we've always done to women is only take one side and expect her just to be that when it suits us. And then we'll flip her and do the other side when it suits us, right? And so how does that fit into the relationship conversation? And when do women do that to men? One of the things, like, be a man or be a real man, or those sorts of things too. And so I just think that we have to be careful with those spiritual polarity conversations and make sure that those aren't just playing out the same types of oppression.
It's definitely a shadow of S.E.X. And sex. Honestly, I think it's a shadow of the new age spiritual, not understanding the dynamics. So as they think they're doing S.E.X, it might not be that at all. It's lacking the rooted experience from wisdom. Yeah. Wisdom from experience. And and it's also kind of the shadow of genital based sex as well, not understanding the dynamic of the masculine and feminine. And so we are having, the pornified world that you're talking about. And really it's such a symptom of the patriarchy, that fast food attitude, hit it and quit it, wham bam, thank you ma'am. Like we don't really want to hear the journey, just like get to the finish line. The fact that you made a choice, now like let's see the end point. But not really taking into consideration that perhaps there's really no endpoints, but we're just always like evolving and expanding or growing, right? So I definitely do see that as a shadow aspect of it as well. And I mean, it also ties into our expectations of each other. Once we get into relationships where we're either having an emotional exchange, or we're having intercourse and we're having a deeper physical exchange. There's attachments and expectations that are rooted in programming. Some of those things are also rooted in wanting to be totally against the programming. I mean, I think right now we kind of joke to ourselves that we're in a place where we're learning how to relate so that we can really be the platform for each other to, jump off of, but not necessarily feel like, that we belong to one another for that, but that it's like, we can be a springboard for each other, and helping each other, and jump into each other's waters, and also get out of the pool, dry off, enjoy the sun in our own time. And when it's time to get back on the diving board, we can do that as well. But that attachment piece is just a really, really big one. the attachment, let's just call it the pornification. You know, I think that that's a good way to put it, because you combine those two things, attachment and the mutated version and synthetic version of what is whole and true, and not from a place of judgment, but from a place of creation, that things take time and there's a process and there's this natural opening and blossoming that occurs when we honor truly Mother Nature is what we're doing. And as children of Mother Nature, we're playing and enjoying pleasure and bliss in ways of creation. But when we have pornification and attachment, I don't know, maybe attachment to it, maybe it's like what Habib talks about, and which y'all talked about with the receipt, the proof, the attachment there, that like I'm in a relationship, or that I am, you know, doing what it is supposed to be done, or that I am having good sex, or I am, I don't know, whatever those places of emotional exchange or physical exchange are. Attachment to the outcome, you know. As much work as we do, I find myself attached to outcomes with you.
Well, because it is both. It's always, it's the tantra between, you know, it's like it's the finding the sacred balance between, because I guess what came up for me when you mentioned attachment is I realize I'm celebrating an 8-year anniversary with USANA Health Sciences, and it's just been amazing that it's been 8 years, and my mentor reminded me of that yesterday. And so after the dinner, I was going through some pictures from all the 8 years to post on Instagram, and there was so many good memories, and it was just so fun to go down memory lane and just see my growth as from leaving my job to, you know, having this business. And as I'm looking at these pictures from all these different gatherings, I'm also seeing screenshots and pictures from text conversations and pictures of past lovers and all of this stuff. And I'm like, oh, wow. And it's interesting that enough time has passed now where it's been 8 years where I can kind of see themes during certain time periods, right? And there was a time period just after my divorce where I just had some very like passionate, loving, just beautiful relationships. And they, for whatever reason, ended up being very short, between 3 to 7 months, and also hidden. Like I couldn't be out in the open, or they couldn't be out there for whatever reason. It was always a different reason, but they couldn't be out in the open. And there was this part of me that, when you talk about a receipt, I know you're talking about like the sexual receipt, like, did you come? That kind of thing. But also it's like, yes, I do have this beautiful piece of my life and this person that I'm creating all these memories with and these experiences with, and they do exist, you know, and it's hard to share, you know, you share so much of your life, but not share this person. And so I think there's that piece of like an attachment of, yes, I want to be claimed. I want to be open. I want to come out of the closet, you know, with this relationship and what the love that's here. And I think one of the things, I mean, I think there's a lot of astrological influences that tied into it, as well as my not wanting to get caught in another long-term relationship because I was still unwinding from my marriage, that had me more open and just saying, hey, yeah, I like you. I feel something here. Let's see where it goes. And not really staying out of it, because I wasn't attached to an outcome. And wouldn't you know, not being attached to an outcome, I fell head over heels in love with, you know, several people, one after the other. Some of them kind of overlapped a little bit, which is stressful too. But and how different that experience was after that phase of my life. So I'd say like 2017, 2018. And it was a completely different experience. And what changed? Part of what changed is I thought, well, maybe it's time for me to start looking for a long-term partner, a long-term relationship. And there's ways that we see constantly those relationships how they should be. And I just don't think it works very well for what you guys are talking about as far as launching each other. It doesn't happen. I see that happening in some relationships, but I don't think that's the story that was sold to us. It's usually someone sacrificing, usually the woman, right? Following his career, picking up, maybe having a degree and not, there's so many women in the 50s and 60s that went to college to meet their husband, and they have these degrees that they never used because they only went to go get them to meet their husband. That was what they did, if they had the money to do that. And so what that looks like, and then that generation now getting divorced and having a degree but absolutely no work experience other than managing a home and being a support person. So it's just very interesting, as we're unwinding all this, and then where sex and sexual liberation along with other liberation ties in, and how feminist women could be hyper masculine. Now they're taking the role of men, and it's like, no, we don't need to do what men are doing. Sometimes we do because we have to provide, and it's different now, but it's not, we don't have to be men, we can do what men do and still not have to be men. And we don't have to lead with that we might have to lead with that masculine energy out in the world, but not necessarily in our personal relationships. And I don't lead with my masculine in my personal relationships. I don't chase. I let people come to me. I just do me. And, it's just, we're all oriented differently.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, a lot of this, this shadow stuff comes from trauma. And
yes.
And I have a couple questions that I did a little poll on Instagram today for people that were interested in some questions. And I was hoping that you two might be able to give some answers. And let me make sure I get this right. Let me look at my screenshot here. Okay. The first one,
make sure you say their name.
Yeah, I can't say their name. It's got to be anonymous, I promised. Otherwise, people don't open up, right? It's like, this is vulnerable stuff. The first, what were you going to say? The first one is, how do I clear past partners' sexual baggage / energies? How do I clear past partners' sexual baggage / energies? So the way that I'm interpreting that question is, if somebody comes into the relationship with a lot of trauma or emotional damage, or they're bringing their partner's energy, this past lover's energy and issues into now your sexual dynamic or your relationship, how do you clear that? I know there's so many women. I even had a couple of them reach out to me last week. That's how I ended up selling so many of my Sugar Buster kits with vaginal imbalances, because the guy is having other partners, and it's like, our pussies don't like that very much. When you bring us, new bacteria, it takes us some time to adjust. We have to get to know the bacteria, give it a hug. Hey, how you doing? A handshake before it's right inside of us without our knowledge, right? So yeah, so I think that was part of the issue. So so our body, our pussy will scream if it's being done, if we're bringing in some of that actual energy, bacteria in the form of bacteria without our knowledge. But what if it's simply energetic, and there's unfinished business or energetic ties or trauma from past lovers?
I think, I feel one of the greatest things we have is sensual emotional exchange itself, is being able to make love, and literally, and I've said this before in your show, but to take the things that do not feel like love, so to take those traumas, to take those hurts, to take those all of those different scarring and wounds and stuff, and to be able to know how to help them to go into a higher vibration. And that is what sensual emotional exchange does. So that's again why, one of the reasons why, going from just saying sex to acknowledging, taking the time for myself to, even on my journey, to keep reprogramming myself to say sensual, being the physical, the physical body and everything, and then the emotional component, which a lot of times is left out. And without that component truly on the table and in the relating, you're not really meeting as much, you're not having as much power as you can. You're not creating the circuit that would happen, and then bringing the awareness and breath into that as well. And they're really, in my opinion, they're inseparable. That to really have a fully working circuit, and within that, they kind of act as a machine, like, if you want to, but a spiritual machine that you could drop the trauma in there, you can drop those wounds in there, and it will work itself out. And that will take time, maybe, but it will be taken care of. So that's one of the greatest technologies that we have. It is relating.
Creating that sacred container. I think, you need safety, you need, like you said, love. So what is love and what is not love? Can you give us some like do's and don'ts? Because you know how you have those tables like wounded masculine, sacred masculine, wounded feminine, sacred feminine. Like sometimes we got to be like really clear on what is and what isn't. So,
well, I think this goes into what you said earlier, Kirti, about the shadow. So a lot of the things that, and not to demonize the shadow is a part of life. It's a natural phenomenon, right? If you have light, you're gonna have shadow. But the shadow is, to me, is that aspect of ourself. I like to call it the ego, the part of us that has been separated from the greater picture of things, right? So in other words, darkness exists as well, but the shadow is not even part of darkness, because darkness is like the big thing, and the shadow is something that's separate and sees itself as separate, and therefore it has its own attachments and obsessions and fears and guilt. And you see what's going on here is all of the quote unquote negative emotions. And again, I don't like to say negative because they are part of life. They are actually the few, because really at the end of the day, and this is what happens when we really truly evolve, which is one of the natural phenomenon from S.E.X, Sensual Emotional Exchange, is that we evolve our consciousness. And how do we do it? Those things, those soil emotions, that's what Kirti and me call it in our coaching. We don't call it negative, we call it soil. It's the manure from which we grow. And so at the end of the day, the highest self knows that all of it is energy. It's not a good or bad, it's beyond all of that. The highest self, the ego, knows that there is no good or bad. It is all just energy. So we're tapping into that phenomenon when we can get to a place where all of those different hurts can be used as a springboard, going back to what you were saying, to jump to a higher consciousness. So really, there will come a point where in a healthy relating, when you have the container, like you just said, Natasha, I won't say you welcome it, but you're very prepared for these traumas to come up.
You know it's coming. You know it's going to come up, because as sure as night comes, as nightfall comes, that shadow is going to show up. Well, and also what I was thinking of as you were speaking is it Jordan Peele, that the director of that movie? What is his movie that's really dealing with the shadow? It's like the folks. There was like a.
Oh, you talking about Get Out?
No, it wasn't Get Out. It was the other one after that, The Others or something like that.
Oh, Us.
Us, yeah.
I never saw it. My sister told me about it.
Ah, okay. Well, the end was a little troubling. The end was a little troubling. I love his movies. And then there's always there's always a part I don't know about that. Like he would Get Out, the hypnosis piece. I'm like, no, don't do that to us. Like, that's not how hypnosis works. Like, you are just ruining my career. and for us, like the end of it was like, okay, I didn't expect it to go that way. But it was really, I guess he wrote it based on a dream and that he had, and it had themes of like, there's the family that was all happy and had everything, and then there was the shadow side, which lived underground, and they got shit, and how they turned out. And so then they, I don't know, somehow I'm horrible at remembering movies, so I'm going to get this wrong because I watched it several years ago. But somehow they made contact and they flipped so that the shadow side came out and got to live in the light. And then the light, the version, talk about multiverse, the version that didn't, got everything now is like, trapped, and obviously it's a metaphor for oppression and slavery and all of that stuff too, and you know, Black folks, and so it all is tied in. But it was really interesting. But anyway, I thought about that as the, you know, it's this, the shadow is within us, is that piece that never got to come out. It was always hidden away. It was always not approved of. It was always not accepted. And then it comes out when it finally gets a chance to be seen. Sometimes it can come out in some pretty gnarly ways, right? And when you're saying the higher self, it's so great when we can be aware of the higher self, but as long as we have a nervous system, right, we're always going to get caught unless we're very, very trained and very, very self-regulated, which takes a lifetime probably to get really good at this. We're going to do that shadow self behavior sometimes, even though we know we're still tapped in, but it's like, look at my shadow self acting out right now. And so I think to your point, be prepared for that when it shows up in the relationship. But I think, and I'll say this as a therapist, I think what's really important is the bounce back, the repair, the reparation. And I grew up in a family where I saw some pretty gnarly fights and cutoffs and all kinds of stuff. And I would say, and no offense to you, Shophar, because I know you're an Aries, but a lot of Aries in my family, and they never apologize, man. Like they look at him choking. He's at a loss for words. Kirti's drinking. She's like, yeah, I'm really thirsty right now. Well, cheers, guys. Cheers. I'll drink too. But yeah, some of those Aries elders in my family, they just go to the grave with some of those things, and just really couldn't bring it in them to apologize, even if it meant that they now lost love, or they lost, you know, that family member connection or whatever else. And so I think the repair, and I would say as a Taurus too, I'm not so good at that either. Like, we're the first two signs of the zodiac, you know, we're the most immature signs theoretically. So yeah, so that's why we have the horns and we're stubborn, because we're like in the terrible twos, like, no, I want it my way. But then also that self-worth too, because it's like, you know who you are, and nobody's gonna, like, you know, budge you or whatever. So it's the repair, and that's the maturity, you know, regardless of your zodiac sign. That is the maturity, is learning how to, the skills to do the repair work, and how quickly you can realize, hey, I'm out of alignment here. I'm out of alignment with my higher self. How do I get back in line with myself, my true self? Not so much who somebody else wants me to be.
I love that.
Yeah, I was going to speak to, you know, if you feel like you're in a relationship and you're bringing in trauma and baggage from previous relationships, you know, like if you feel like you're the person that's doing that, you know, maybe your partner is also doing that. I don't know. But either way, I mean, it's good to maybe also try to not see it as baggage. You know, relationships are a natural part of life. And just as much as we feel that our relationships have held us, that's okay. Our relationships have held us back. There's also this idea that when we can start to see things in a different light, and we can start to compost that the shit and the manure of the soil, and we can start to compost it, that baggage starts to become blessings.
Yeah.
You know, and it's almost things that feel more like burdens can become blessings. Relationships teach us about boundaries. Relationships allow us to do that. So if we are in a current relating and we feel like, ooh, this is a pattern, like this is something that I have felt before, like, oh, I'm bringing this in from the past, like this is the same dynamic from the last partnership, or, you know, he or she used to say that to me also all the time. These are good signs that these are things that are wanting to not be burdens anymore.
Hmm.
That they are desiring a boundary to be drawn so that you don't have to feel like you're repressed or under attack about that anymore. And then with the tools, right, getting the tools so that you can effectively communicate what you're going through and also be honest about your desires of like, wow, what's feeling burdensome, and this is a pattern for me. That's why I've attracted you and this dynamic again, and being able to honestly speak about it and have those tools. So that to me feels like a bridge.
Mm.
You know, it's a bridge towards that blossoming.
Mm.
Absolutely. And I, you know, and then it goes back to the nervous system, and because I think of epigenetics and you know, if your ancestors ate the poison berry, you're like, something ain't right about that berry over there. I don't know what it is, but you know, like it's in your DNA, it's in your cells to stay away from and not go near that berry. But then what happens is then we attract a partner that looks just like that berry and might even smell like that berry, but it's not that berry, but we've already, you know, from a former relationship, eaten the poison berry. And so now we're like, you know, we're very cautious when something can appear like behaviors, let's say, you know, they have similar behaviors of the poison berry, but they're not the poison berry. And so then it's this process of going back to the nervous system and regulating and slowing down and being really cautious and logical and mindful. I mean, I say logical, but also just balance logical and intuition, because our intuition, our body knows what's really up. It just, the mind kind of hijacks it. That's the spinning mind hijacks it. So that's where the breath poetry comes in, Shophar, and you know, regulating and self-regulating and being mindful. And I will say, both of you are very authentic and mindful people. And one thing I've noticed over the years, Shophar, is you always, when things come up with other people, it takes a while to get you riled up. I feel like you give people the benefit of the doubt. You really are kind of flip it every which way, taste it, smell it, see what it's up. You know, you kind of approach a situation as kind of the observer and the researcher and whatever else. And I would say, Kirti, you, like myself, are like, you know, also the same way, but you're kind of more in touch with, you know, these, nope. Like, I guess it's that Cali energy, right? That like, nope, we're not messing around with this. But maybe that's just been your process this year too, because I know you've been through going through a lot of challenges, and especially sharpening your sword in that area this year. And anybody who's divorced a narcissist will have done that too, because that's the process. Oh man. Okay. So using that, so it's clearing out that baggage or that energy, through maybe not seeing it as baggage. But what if, because I'm not sure that I'm interpreting this question right. So just to give this person the benefit of the doubt, what if they're talking about, like, there's still a connection that's maybe not appropriate. Like there's still some sexual energy there that's getting kind of toyed with, or maybe they have unfinished business with that. They haven't had that clearing conversation. They haven't properly closed up that past relationship. And now that's bleeding over into the current relationship. What do you suggest about clearing that out of the way, if that's the way that?
Well, I think that, again, it's like the communication tools of being able to speak to what you're feeling and sensing. Like that's really such a big piece of relating, to be able to speak, you know, your truths from a place of love and compassion for the evolution of your relationship. You know what I'm saying? It's not really even about, I mean, really it's for the evolution of yourself in relationship. And, you know, by doing that, your partner is also encouraged to step up or to step to the side and find what works for them in every moment. So I think when you get into relationship, and if you feel like your partner there's other connections and other bonds that are going on, I think you got to speak to them. And the primary partnership has to feel like the foundation.
Mhm.
So, whenever you step into relationship with anybody, to the point where, it is more time where you're living with them and you're sharing resources,
Mhm.
there's, to me, a sense of primary partnership there. And so in that sense, it doesn't mean that you can or can't do anything with past lovers or past connections. It's actually respecting the current relation by stepping into the current relating your truths as they are sacred to you. Because, like, if you're going to move into a home together, like, bring all your stuff. Don't just bring the stuff that looks good, but bring your things, and let's really talk about what it looks like to join our homes together and join our lifestyles together. And if there's a desire to maintain past connections, then the conversation has to be with the primary partnership, that what will help that primary partner feel safe in allowing their partner to continue talking to somebody from the past. And I know for myself, like, if I was just to put myself in that position, I would want to be really clear with understanding what's the nature of the relating now. Because, at least for us, whenever we've navigated situations like that, what would come up for me was like, oh man, but I wasn't in your field, when you met this person. And so, like, there's this other level of energy. Like, any person you meet now, it's like, I'm going to be in your field, like, I'm a part of who you are. When it's something from the past, it's like, I don't feel like I'm a part of it. And so a big piece of relating and healing trauma of separation, or healing where sometimes it's like the fact that you feel like you have to sever or cut a relationship that may have had lots of good qualities. I mean, I'm somebody that's always severed and cut them. And then now I realize, like, oh man, there's lots of beautiful stuff there. And so I think having that honest conversation about the nature of your past lovers, the nature of your connections, and then really being comfortable with each other. And if it's a romantic connection, it's like, how can the current partnership be a part of that? You know what I'm saying? Or feel like they're a part of it. Otherwise, it might be a thing where you shouldn't be sharing resources. And it should be all dating. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly. I feel that too. Again, Taurus, sovereignty, self-worth, self-respect, respect me, motherfucker. But because I respect me, but beyond that, I feel like, in all seriousness, I've been in that situation. I've been the other woman more so, not that I've put myself there, but I've got men coming to me as the other woman more so than I've been the one who I'm the primary partner, although it's happened there too. I've been on both sides. All women probably have. And so I find that if my partner still has something with an ex or whatever, I'm like, awesome, let's go to coffee. Like, let's go to dinner. I want to meet her, because if she was important to you, then it's part of your story and that's about you. And I want to be, let's do this, like, I want to see what it's all about. And if that discharges, first of all, if that's like, oh no, that can't happen, or if that then ruins the charge of energy, then that wasn't in integrity. That connection wasn't really compatible, as far as maintaining probably a primary partnership and also that connection, right? So for me, that's always been kind of a quick solution, I guess, or a way to go. And it's natural. It's like, it's genuine. Like, it's really genuine. However, I do have a question for Shophar, because you're the divine masculine representative tonight. You're the gentleman in the room. You and who is that on your shirt? Is that Jackie Chan? Okay, you got him too, helping you out. Kirti's like, more water. I'm just teasing you guys. It's too much fun. Anyway, I want to ask you a question, because I have often been this woman where maybe I've dated a man in the past and he is a past lover, or it was just a romantic spark or interest and nothing ever happened with it, but there might be an attraction there. I'll see them with their partners, like they're not hiding, because it's hard to hide now with Instagram too, but they're not hiding their partners. I'm fully aware of their partners. I'm like, yay, good for you, like happy for them. And then I'm getting like either messages in my inbox or text messages or something of like flirtation, like very overt flirtation. And I've had this happen 3 times just in the past 6 months. And I feel so, it feels gross, to be honest. And so what are men thinking when they're doing that? Because it's obviously not turning me on. It's not exciting me. It's doing quite the opposite, where I'm kind of like repulsed, because I'm like, oh shit, imagine if I was that woman. Like I would feel like my guy is like a dog, you know, like so like as they do it, I'm kind of like losing respect, chipping away at respect I had, you know, for these guys. So what is it that they're thinking that reaching out and making sexually suggestive comments is going to do? How is that benefiting them? Because it's not, obviously not benefiting either of the ladies in the dynamic. Or maybe there are some ladies out there that find that a compliment, but I think that's a self-esteem problem.
So I think your last part of it though, that would be what I would say, is that it may not work with you or, you know, certain womb beings, but there's going to be some that is going to work for. And it's probably just like a feeler, kind of feeling for those who have the self-image, that are in that vibration,
Like
in that vibration.
Like,
yeah,
is her self-esteem low enough where she can be my side chick, kind of thing?
It's like, you just saw me post, so I'm not trying to hide it, and then I shoot you a message too, and then you flirt back with me. It's like, okay, game on, because I already know I saw you like the picture or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah,
some women are turned on by the idea of trying to get a man's attention from that, if they are in a relationship.
it can be any myriad of things too, because it could also be a self-defeating thing, where it's like you're going to set yourself up for something that ain't going to work because he's already cheating. That's that energy right off jump. How far can that really go? So there's any myriad of reasons why a womb being might get back, hit back with and reflect that. But I would think that's what it is. And just like he sent it to you, he sent it to probably 2 or 3 other womb beings too at the same time.
Right.
I would bet, big time that would be the case, that it wasn't just you, it was a couple to see who's gonna bite, given the situation.
Oh yeah, I've been in that situation too, where it's like Saturday night, 9 o'clock. Hey, what are you doing? And I'm like, seriously, what was I, 3 or 11 on your list? Or was I 1? I probably wasn't 1 because it's already 9 o'clock. Like, who the hell do you think that I am? Like, come on now. Like, really? I don't know.
I wanted to say something. I want to say that also something tied back to what we were talking about before. And I kind of feel like it might connect to this whole dynamic that you're speaking to, of like men doing this thing where they're like temperature checking, and they're just like wanting to make sure. I think it's also like this fear of being alone, and like always wanting to make sure they got something going on.
Backup plan in case things get bad. They want a backup plan. Is that right, Sho? Also, the attention. I think they want the attention. So even if she doesn't think that she's going to do anything with them, if she flirts back with them, he kind of gets his ego stroked a little bit, maybe, which then actually might make him feel more secure in his relationship. I don't know. I'm trying to like reverse psychology.
Well, I mean, I think also if it within a partnership, if there is an imbalance of feeling powerful and passionate, like if both people are feeling completely full and they're also really fully engaged by life, you're going to see a different level of engagement. But then if there's, that's a lot to expect for 2 human beings navigating this planet. Like both people are going through their own waves. So for some people, wherever they feel powerful, they're going to lean in on that when they're not able to create from a place, you know,
Yeah.
if they're not feeling like truly powerful in their passion, they're going to go to where they might feel powerful. And I think for a lot of us, seeking approval and getting that external attention it's a real easy, quick fix. It feels really good.
And aren't we trained to do that in the school system, like the gold stars and, oh, you did it right, and like all this praise? And I mean, it's good to get praise and we want to get acknowledgement, but it's like we're like programmed also to seek.
Well, yeah, it's acknowledgement based on somebody else's standards that
yes.
might not be natural to you.
So here's the other thing. I mean, we all are capable of, you know, the more open our heart is and the more vulnerable and loving our heart is, I feel like the more, you know, we can be also hurt. And so you just have to kind of take a chance with that. And I know that if I'm hurt, I'll shut down, at least temporarily, you know, until I can gather up the care again, because I feel deep. I feel really deep. But if I have a past lover that I've really loved, and so I noticed this again going through my memories the last 8 years, and I'm seeing these photos and I'm like, oh, I remember that time. That was such a beautiful, oh, we had so much fun. That was so beautiful. And then it's also this feeling of like, we're not those people. We were like this, and then we're like this, and it could never go back. It could never work again. We're in a different place, but I still have this nostalgia and this like love, and that love is still expansive and it's still there. So if I see them happy and in love with somebody else, then I love their partner too, because I loved them once. Yes. And there's still that universal, like unconditional love that I share, as long as you don't like directly, you know, aren't trying to hurt me or just keep doing stuff. I have that, and I want to see them happy. And so it's not hard for me to continue to keep people in my life. I don't want to see them every week or go to coffee every week or whatever. But I like knowing that I can still kind of like,
see them,
reach out and touch, or like if there's something that they need or I need, that we can still have a conversation, you know, that sort of thing.
That sounds very mature.
But I'm not exactly sure where that comes from. And maybe it comes from, I don't know, maybe it just comes from like loving really deep, or maybe it comes from being in this other woman situation so often. Going back to your point about the baggage and seeing it as treasure, is being in this situation so many times that I just like, damn, let's all just love each other, because I don't like this sneaking around stuff, you know. But also recognize, again, like we were talking about the attachment or whatever, recognize what's in the now, what's right here and now, and where my primary energy is right now, and respect that as well. So there's that piece.
Yeah, and I think, you know, there's a beauty to hearts like yours, and I think hearts like Shophar's, where when you truly, you know, spend the time with someone and you connect. Like for me, by the time I usually leave a relationship, I have tried everything. Like it's like it's to the point, okay, we got to separate, but that's also because I didn't really necessarily know how to leave, you know, so I would just kind of stay in it, probably when it wasn't always serving our highest purpose.
Until but I think it was rotting.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of what you all carry is that you have the sensibility and awareness that it's like, okay, this isn't really serving my purpose right now, and it doesn't mean that like I don't like all of you, but the part that is about like relating and connecting in this way, it might not, that's not the ideal right now. And I think that in these types of places, and even to the person who wrote about, you know, carrying in quote unquote baggage from past relationships, or if you feel like your partner is bringing in baggage from their relationships, or they have older connections that you feel like are getting in the way of your connection, there's a lot of power in ritual with one another, or ceremony with one another about these things, So when you have powerful conversations and you're able to openly discuss what you're feeling or what you're navigating. So like if I'm able to tell Shophar, like, hey, I feel sometimes like we're disconnected, or that you're, you know, that perhaps your energy is being split, and I don't feel like our relationship cup is quite full, and there might be energy, you know, but I have to be able to openly speak that. I have to feel safe and comfortable to be able to speak those things. And Shophar has to be able to openly speak and own his truth and say, okay, yes, this is what it is, and this is what's important to me right now, right? And whatever is important to both people can be attained. Believing that both people will always get what they want is beautiful, because once you decide on what both people want, so if both people want to move through this feeling of baggage, or if both people want to move through the trauma that's presenting itself in intimate spaces within a relationship, if both people truly agree to do that, well, now you've got something that you're working on creating, and it's going to quickly expose what needs to be released and let go of. And that's when you can actually create really powerful, potent ritual and ceremony together, where you can speak and share with, you know, we can be in ceremony and speak to these past relationships and the parts and dynamics of the relationship that you want to grow and bring into your current relating, and maybe parts of the older relationships that you had before your current relationship that maybe didn't serve you, and that are serving as baggage and trauma, that you're ready to up level and just speak that. And by, you know, bringing momentum to the elements of nature and the winds of change, and, you know, grounding in your truth and bringing in the waters of creation, and alchemizing, you know, that which doesn't serve the partnership, you can, something shifts to where you're actually allowing all dynamics that serve as a powerful platform to come in. And instead of it feeling like a threat, the perspective is just shifted, because you've allowed you and your partner have had really honest conversation about, and you're building trust, because your partner's willing to be vulnerable and say, these are the parts that served me, and these are the parts that didn't serve me. You know, it's not like, and then so like, I think in some ways it's like an uncoupling with the relationships of your past, that uncouple with dynamics that truly didn't serve you, and really try to bring a shift of that pattern in the current relating, but bring your partner along with you. A lot of times we do this work and like we don't bring our partnerships along. We're afraid of what they'll say. We're afraid that they'll run away from us. And these are the moments when you've got to really step in, because if they're going to run away, or if they're afraid, then it might not be a match for your energy level and what you're bringing to the game. And that's okay. This might not be a match right now, even.
Yeah. So there's two themes that are coming up for me really clear as I'm listening to you speak. And you just said the first thing that I was going to say. Before you can even get to these other two themes, you have to be able to stay. You have to be able to have that conversation and not run, right? And that takes self-work to be able to even tolerate. And which is my second point, is when you're talking about you have to be able to go to Shophar with these things, I imagine you have to do it in a gentle enough and tentative enough way where he can actually be open to it and then stay, right? And stay and listen. And so that leads me to the third point that's really clear, which is the ceremony, the ritual is a sacred space. And we can use quite violent communication in our everyday consciousness, because that's the way the world sort of operates. But once you create the container for a ceremony or a sacred space or a ritual, naturally the communication automatically downshifts and changes, because now you've entered an altered state, right? And there's a different type of communication, and there's a different, you can clear out all of that junk.
Yes.
Basically.
I want to speak to something right there. Remember how you were talking about the berry? It looks like the berry. It's you know, but then there's like something about she's like, oh, I don't know about eating that berry. But the truth is that what makes that berry and so foreign, it's the lack of trust that you could eat the berry and be okay as well, right? And so ritual and ceremony, what it does is it creates that space where we can do things different and be willing and open to see a possibility of the way that it doesn't exist yet. And we've got to do that from realizing and understanding the box and the structures that we are living within. And what hasn't been working for us, name that, and name that berry and how it's felt to eat that berry, and people not survive that berry. But then also realize that, wow, we've done so much work now to also be able to transmute the energy of that berry to nectar and not poison away from that. And that we do also have that technology within us, that should we choose to believe so, like, could we possibly, now that we know that things have changed, that even though this berry looks like that it truly is not that berry, could we trust that it be something different for us and step into a new concept and way of being in relationship?
Well, we could definitely be superhuman and do that. That's absolutely possible. Even things like, if okay, instead of poison berry, we could say C19, or we could say HIV. You know, obviously there's tons of research that's showing you can be exposed to those things and not, you know, be sick, not get sick with it. So it's like we already have this, obviously, this capability in our DNA, which is so related to our consciousness. But in bringing it back to relationships and relationship traumas, I think so many people are like, this looks like that poison berry, but these are totally safe. I'm just going to choose a blueberry or a raspberry. So it's just like, it's so easy. It's right here, right? So there, and that's okay too. But a lot of times we're just drawn to that poison berry, and if we are, then honor that, and like you said, go through this alchemy process. It might be something that, you know, is destined, that you plan to come down here and become immune to the poison berry in this lifetime.
Right.
So yeah.
And the truth is that, you know, within Mother Nature too, it's like the more we step into our gifts and powers, we're sharpening each other's saw. It's like when one, you know, we were watching actually a video together, like between the moth and the bat, and it was like the moth would create one source of protection from the bat, and then the bat would evolve, their species would evolve to be able to sense that protection, and then they would create and they would evolve and so it's almost like that's what ritual does, is it's ceremony, just, and really honest conversation is ceremonial.
Yeah,
absolutely. You know what I'm saying? When you create, like, yeah, it's like you have a process and you guys have decided to talk about something. You have a process, you have an outcome, you agree on a certain way, and you have an intention, right? These are all aspects of that. But when we do things like that, and when we do things and we a ritual or a rites that we want to like cross through as a friendship, as a partnership, as a family, and we do ritual, but basically it's honoring that up leveling of Mother Nature, where it's like, okay, I see where you're at, and I call you here. You know what I mean? And so by doing something different, and like, you know, whether it be a grief ceremony, whether it be an uncoupling ceremony, whether it be a new moon, full moon, like these are all beautiful opportunities to ritualize moments of doing things differently.
Right. And when you get into that altered state, here's the brain science, right? You're going into those theta wave states, which is where it's going so deep. You really are planting something. And this is why it's not just like getting together and witchcraft or whatever. It's really a scientific process that is a huge transition. And that's why we have things like, you know, funerals and weddings. I used to be so anti everything, like I hated weddings. I didn't like going to funerals. I didn't like doing any of it. I'm like, why do we have to do this weird communion where you eat the bread? And I was like, why do we do these things? I don't get it. But now in my older years, I'm like, oh, I see the power of these things that are passed down through different years, but I also don't need to follow it exactly. I can create, I can tweak and mold, you know, a ceremony that better fits me. But I love the use of ceremony in having those relationship discussions. And that in my last partnership, we used that a lot, taking it to ceremony. If there was something that we were disagreeing on, and yet, you know, it got to the point where it was too much, then the ceremony, I guess, could contain. It had got that, you know, and it's locked down. You're like in a small little box, and the energy's bouncing. It's just going to keep, that's the fire, right? That's the fire of the alchemy. And it's like, it's going to transform you. But if you're still holding on to your story, or your poison berry story, or whatever it is, like, you're not going to move past that. And by you, I say me and we, and, you know, all of us. And at a certain point too, I just, yeah, I guess the part that's sad for me is you can want the same things. We wanted exactly the same things. The biggest fights, we both wanted the same things. And I'm like, can't you see we want the same things? How is there such a, but it's the nervous system. And if you get into that space, this is the real poison. When you get into that space of thinking that your partner is the poison berry, or that you are at, you know, you're on different teams rather than you against the poison berry, right? Like, how are we gonna deal with this berry? You know, like, how are you gonna work together? And that's that. I find that when that shift happens, which is often because of the trauma from the past poison berry, then you lost the plot, and it's really hard to get back on it. And if the repair doesn't happen and you don't get back on it before the next thing comes up, then it starts slipping away, right? And so it's a sad process, because you can have such an aware higher self. Like, your higher self is like, damn, like, I see you, you know, and then yet our bodies our nervous systems are doing something different, and they're like off on running their own show. Right. Which relates to the second question. How do I heal sexual trauma, low sex drive from being cheated on multiple times? As a segue and an answer, a quick answer to this question, but we'll elaborate because I want to hear what the two of you have to say. When Shophar and I are co-facilitating an inclusion, it is a ceremony every time. It's online, it's Zoom, but we create a sacred container. It starts on time mostly, sometimes we're a little bit late, and it ends on time mostly. Not too much either way, but there are guidelines that we follow while we're in this particular ceremony. And there's a certain guideline for communication and what is something we don't do in this temple, and something that we want to enhance in this temple. And there are not rigid timelines, but there are limited amounts of time for people to speak, because it's not just two people, it's a group, and we have to make sure everybody is seen and everybody's attended to in that window, right? And that is such a big part of allowing the healing to occur, which is what you're saying, Kirti, as far as in Shophar too, the love that you create in the relationship and the safety. So when people come to inclusion to heal their trauma with us, we are teaching you that. We are letting you bathe in that so that you can get used to that, and you bring that to your partnership if you're not already doing it in your partnership. And you will no longer be able to tolerate partnerships that run from that kind of safe container. And so as I was getting trained in this process, I could no longer stay in my marriage and with someone who would run from any accountability or ability to tolerate a safe container like that, right? As my heart was opening up. So this question, how do I heal from sexual trauma, low sex drive, from being cheated on multiple times? I mean, I could speak to you, but I want to hear what you guys have to say.
Well, I would say it, when we really think about what is the cause of the low sex drive energetically, you know, the energy needs to flow, right? In order for the sexual fire to be high, it needs to be, we need to stoke it. And when we've been cheated on, when there's some trauma or whatever, that may cause the fire to not be stoked. What I mean is like, let's say that now we have a fear. Let's say that the soil emotion, AKA negative emotion, but soil emotion that is now manifesting in our energy by our aura is fear. So that may block certain places in our body or in our auric field that now the energy can't move around. And so it's going to cause the libido to be lower. Or maybe the challenge also is there's a block now in the heart. The heart in some way has now been impaired by the cheating. And notice how the word cheat though has heat in it. Just like the word heart also has heat in it. And so if we can bring our awareness back to self and bring our heart back to self and stoke it with our own breath, our own awareness, eventually you can move the energy. But we've got to know what's going on. And lovemaking is, or sensual emotional exchange, again, is the way that is nature's way of doing it. Or you go to someone who understands these dynamics and understand what's going on with you to help give you a boost. And then once you get the boost, nature's going to take its course. Like we're all probably digesting food right now. You know what I'm saying? Like you ladies are somewhere in your phase of your cycle, wherever that is, following the moon and everything. Like we're all speaking the English language, and that's being like all of these amazing things are going on without us even having to think about it. In fact, thinking is too slow. So what I'm getting at, and then I'll be quiet, is our relationships are the same way. They are, if we allow ourselves to go back to the natural blueprint, then the natural blueprint, the super intelligence takes over. But many of us are not inviting the super intelligence into our relationships.
That's good.
Yeah. Boom. You got both of us quiet. That must have been good so far. We're just here soaking it in, receiving.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, friendships and partnerships have a beautiful capacity to help each other heal trauma. And when we can actually tune into the level beyond words, and we are healing each other with our presence, because we've done the work so deeply that we are carrying that vibration and that frequency of transmutation, like moment to moment transmuting and composting and just alchemizing and putting out, returning gold where ash, when it feels like ash. When we can go beyond the words of that, and we're just carrying that vibration, we can literally heal each other once we touch, and even just give each other a hug or shake each other's hands, even pat each other on the back. It's like there's such capacity available. There's just so much available to us if we're willing to imagine that reality and level.
I love that. And to speak to what you just said, Kirti, is like I think that is the power of the technology that we call like tantra, tantra, or I like to call it S.E.X, sensual emotional exchange. But it's because this segmenting, in science, in our current understanding of science, it likes to take the scalpel out and chop things up a lot and look and dissect and everything, and that's good. It serves its purpose. And we need to also invite now the feminine energy of the holisticness. And what I'm getting at is that these natural technologies, S.E.X, sensual emotional exchange, being nature's technology to help us evolve. When we come back to that natural blueprint, we realize that life itself is spiritual. There's no segmentation like this is spiritual. Life is spiritual. And in the world, and you said this earlier, and this is one of your sayings,
and
ritualize the moment, ritualize the moment. Well, in the word spiritual is ritual.
Mm.
So when we start to realize that all life is spiritual, then all life is what?
Yeah.
It's ritual.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And your words, there's so much power, and both of you have spoken to it, in being honest, honing, the word hone and one, both hone and one are in honesty. When we are one with self, when we hone then that right off itself is a spark. And you
Mhm.
talk about raising your sex drive and healing traumas. Be honest with yourself, what you got going on, and be honest with your past lover, like whatever your dynamics are. But start with honesty. That's alignment. And if we have a crook in our back, the kundalini, the sensual emotional exchange, I mean the sensual creative force can't flow. So honesty is alignment.
Yeah, and I think anytime you're feeling like, oh, there's baggage, there's trauma, there's triggers, that's a sign that there is a lack of honesty going on, and there's a lack of trust and a lack of safety. And it wants to be spoken to, and it wants to be taken care of, and it wants to be heard, and it wants to be seen, and it wants to be felt, and it first and foremost by you. And then once you can carry it and you can nurture it and you can heal it, then share it, with others, and the wisdom that comes from that. And then in that process, if you need help, there's people who are qualified to help you do that work.
Well, everybody needs help. Let's be honest. Everybody needs
and
help.
Many people try to do it on their own over and over again, and you'll just the broken record gets old. And eventually you're like, I just need somebody to help me skip past this spot.
It's kind of like building a business, and that's why I say, like, this last 8 years with this USANA team and learning all these business skills, it's just amazing, because it's a personal development practice. And just like building a business, how are you going to make money, or how are you going to expand if you don't ask for help from somebody who sees things differently? I can't do an assessment of my business because I'm in it. Like, I created it, but somebody else can sit down and tell me what they think about it. That's so valuable, of what, if they have a question about my marketing, then that means I missed something. I'm so in my jargon or whatever that I'm not understanding. And it's the same with relationships. We're going to stay small and shut down if we don't ask for help. Sometimes we need to get help from somebody who's an outside person who specializes in that area, to expand and go where we want to go. We're wasting so much time, we're wasting energy, we're wasting, all of it. And to speak on what both of you are talking about, which is the alignment and the honesty, I was going to say, we got to keep this energy clean. Otherwise it's not healing. There's this, Kirti and I have spoken about this before, but it's just, I've heard it. Dr. Northrup writes about it in her books, how sensitive of a barometer the woman's body is. And if you even touch her the wrong way, or you bring her that cheating behavior, her body responds immediately. Bacterial vaginosis, herpes outbreak, like yeast infection. It's just like boom. She knows, like to your point, Shophar, like, energy travels faster than words. Energy can say what words cannot. And you might not be saying the words, but her body knows and her body feels it. And so can we get more honest, and can we stay in alignment so that we can stay in that healing, not only for ourselves, but for our relationship? Because and that brings us back to the title, which is The Shadow of Sex. It's just like you can have the most, it doesn't matter the time or how long you've known somebody or whatever else, but it's like that sex can be healing, that sensual emotional exchange, to use your word, or it can be devastating. It could do damage to the whole body because it was of the way that the energy was exchanged, or even what happened after, right? Like, which can cheapen it, or whatever else. It's just the whole interaction of holding the energy. And I know this is talking about pet peeves. This is one of the things that bothers me for people that don't know what they're getting into when they start doing this work with sexuality. They do not know what they're getting into. And at least as a therapist who's taken exams and had to do supervised hours and all of this stuff, maybe they didn't teach us about energy, but emotions are energy. And we're taught about emotions, and we're taught about human emotions, and we're taught about boundaries. And because you don't have the sophistication yet when you first start out to be in all these scenarios and to really see how it works out, they hammer it into you, these ethical guidelines, and you are going to lose your damn license if you don't follow them. And there's people out there doing all of this work without any kind of training, without any mentors, without any ethical board, without any of the things. I'm not saying you need all of those things, but you need something. You need some kind of something that's guiding you and giving you that checks and balances, so that you don't go rogue and start thinking that you're more powerful, or you're somehow more enlightened than you really are. Because I know if I think of myself as a 20 something, oh man, I thought I knew so much. Like I was like, I'm ready to heal people, I'm gonna be this coach. Like luckily they didn't have any of these coaching programs back then, because I would have paid the $500 and then been the world's expert on whatever whatever I was into at the moment, right? Like that's how 20 somethings think. And I couldn't do that. I had to go the hard, long, mainstream credentialed route. And so now I'm like, oh, thank goodness. Like I would be humiliated to think of what kind of work I would have been doing back then when I was overly eager and underqualified. But that's the whole thing with the sensual emotional exchange. When you're in a therapy space or the coaching space, the kind of work that you two do, as well as the energy work, even though I've never experienced your energy work, I've just spent a lot of time in your energy. It's a space that the energy feels clean, and that's what makes it healing. It's clean, it's safe. And if people don't know what they're doing, or they have ulterior motives, or they're have multiple agendas or outcomes they want from you, it doesn't feel clean, and therefore it's not healing. And that is the shadow of sex too. And so whether you've had sexual trauma because you've been sexually abused as a kid, whether you've been taken advantage of by a mentor, a teacher, a therapist, a doctor, or anybody in a position of power, whether it's been your lover cheating on you multiple times, it's a similar wound. Somebody's put their agenda over what was good for you, and they weren't coming at you to have an energetic healing experience or create that kind of energy. They were only thinking of what they could gain. And that is this narcissistic culture that we were all raised in, right? And that I am very passionate about unwinding. So for anybody watching, obviously join Shophar and Ion Inclusion. That's one way to heal your trauma. We open doors for that in September. Contact me, natashadwina.com, so I can interview you and see if it's a right fit. The two of you have so many offerings. Kirti's movement medicine class is my medicine. I've been in a funk. I texted her today. I'm like, I should have gone to class on Sunday. I had work to do and I didn't even get it all done because I was like out of my routine. So I might as well have just gone. And I've been in a funk now because I didn't get to go be funky.
Yeah, and I'm Shophar and I were really excited to be launching a new webinar series called, Sex to Sex, which is speaking exactly to this, thank you, to this dynamic that we're talking about of understanding how we've been functioning from one perspective, and it's actually been holding back men and women from living probably their fullest sensual experienced lives with one another, whether it's friendship or romantic connection, whether it's marriage, whether it's lifetime partnership. And like you said, that family foundation, but a big piece of learning about the sex to sex work is just starting to look at your perspective and your programming, and being willing to see, how sometimes we even look at each other through our programming. So if that's something that interests you, check that out.
Yeah, absolutely. So how do they contact you and just inquire about that? Is that the easiest way to get hooked up with that?
Yeah, we have we can send a link to you as well. So if anyone reaches out to you, anybody through time and space, if they're watching,
Yeah.
it's going to be on Thursday. But you can still check the link even if through time and space you see this afterwards.
Oh, that webinar. Okay, it's the one time. It's a one time then. It's not an ongoing.
No, we're going to be doing it ongoing. We're
Okay,
actually
okay.
we're thinking about having it,
Every 2 months.
every 2 months or so, where, because the truth is the information is pretty dense. It's like we're noticing people will go through it once, we're having follow-ups, and it's like, okay, you go a little bit deeper, and then you come back and you might want to, and I know you also do things like that with your job, where you are presenting the same information, and people will revisit to get a little bit of a deeper understanding. And so there's a lot of unwinding to do around our sexual intimacy and our repression and our expression of sexuality as men and women. And so we barely, the first time you might find that you scrape the surface. We use lots of powerful imagery and artwork and photography to craft deeply engaging reflection questions, where you will be journaling for yourself and engaging with different dynamics of your own archetypes and your own personalities to see, what parts of you are wanting to come out and play, and what parts of you feel pretty scared and lack that trust. And so it's a very cool exercise to start to learn how to self-source with yourself around some of these topics. And
okay. So that happens on Thursday. When's the registration cutoff? When do they need to contact you?
By tomorrow.
By tomorrow. Okay.
Yeah, I feel like we're gonna give you the link, and everything will always be up to date on that link. Like the dates will all be on there. Okay. And so if anybody ever wants to check, we will always have the next upcoming date on that link.
Wait,
that's the Virgo in you.
Quick question. Well, we could do that behind, but I thought the link changes every time you change it. It does.
It does. So we just update if we change the date, we just send her the link.
Oh, okay, you have to send the link again. Okay, got it. All right.
Yeah, so I have the link. So as long as I have the link, then if you change anything, yeah. So I've already shared that with a couple of people. I didn't realize you're speaking of the same webinar, because the title is a little bit different, but this is because it's the co-head one and not the men's only, because Shophar, you do men's only, and then you're doing Qigong in Wednesday mornings now.
Yeah, so once a month. So the next one is June 15th, Wednesday, June 15th. At the Zen Garden, the Japanese Friendship Garden at Balboa Park. And then can get with me also every other Wednesday. I'm a part of a men's group called Hearts and Minds Men's Group that meets at a barbershop here in North Park.
So that's different than Wise Dome.
Yes, so this branched off of Wise Dome.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Wise Dome, thank you. Wise Dome was, going over my book and everything, but then, we eventually just tailored it to just men, not just going over sacred orgasmic living.
I see. Okay, well, lots of very cool offerings. And I know you both do one-on-one work as well, if people want to dive in deeper with you one-on-one. What about
your Patreon?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, I don't want to inundate people, but yes. we have a lot of shit.
Just get it all out. It's the season finale. Get it all out. Tell people where they can find you. Where you can.
I feel like, over the summer, this would be a good time for people to check out.
Totally.
We're not going to be doing our podcasts, and it doesn't start till September. So this is a good way to they can do some self-study and tap into all of your guys' content that's online.
Well, because the summer is for embodiment. The summer is to go practice these skills. So they're going to go practice, and they're going to be like, oh, fuck that up. I was just telling you guys some of my dating stories right before we went live. So yeah, then you go back, you gather more information, you get back out there. Yeah. So yeah, Patreon, or how do they find you? I'm not that familiar with Patreon. I know what it is, but I don't partake yet in Patreon.
It's Faux Show Health on Patreon. So FO and then SHO and then just word health. And that's the same as my YouTube channel.
I realized that today because I couldn't find you. I was searching. I was like, where the heck is he? And I'm a subscriber. I had to look under my subscribers and then go down and find you. But I didn't realize
you couldn't find me by searching?
I Googled your name. I put Googled YouTube and then your name, and then other people's channels popped up with you on it. And then I Googled faux show energy work, and I'm like, where is he? What, this is crazy. And then I had to go under because as a subscriber, and then I was like, it's because of faux show health. So they're really picky about, I guess, the name you put in.
Yeah, I've never tried to Google myself. I know when I've like searched, other like guests on my show, like they usually come up pretty close, which is good, close to the top, which is good. But I guess for myself, I need to tighten that up.
Maybe because you've been on so many different podcasts too, because it's like popping up other people's podcasts or something. I don't know. It was interesting. Yeah. Well, so
the idea of the Patreon is for us to get a little more juicy.
Oh yeah. Anytime you have a membership site, you're uncensored, right? It's like the the real deal.
Yeah, it's like AM Sadhana is a place where we get a little bit juicy.
Oh yeah, get a little funky there. I know, I can't wait. Yeah. I'm gonna wake up in time tomorrow.
I
promise.
It'll happen. It'll happen. So I think that for people who are like wanting to take their work into another step and really show up for themselves and learn some other techniques. And the reason why is also we want people who take it seriously enough to want to invest, their time, space, energy, and money to actually support us so that we can continue to provide and produce this work. I'm going to speak for Shophar and just say, like, he's been super committed. He left the Matrix over 10 years ago and has been committed to this work. And like, this is what he does. This is the only thing that he does all day, every day. He's either working on his like materials or his books. And so the Patreon is a way to provide passive income so he can continue to produce and do that work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, I got a new video coming out. I'm really excited about quantum sex. So that'll be coming up. I just finished editing it. I already uploaded it to YouTube, but it's scheduled for Saturday at 9:00.
We got the inside scoop now. Everybody's listening. You heard it here first. You can be the first one in line on YouTube. Right. Get the popcorn ready. Get all the snacks, the sexy snacks. For some quantum S.E.X, sensual emotional exchange.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah. And the three of us have been talking about, I've been inviting you to do something this summer. Since, my kids are out of school, the podcast is going on hiatus. So it frees up some of mine and Kirti's time. Kirti's not in school anymore, that sort of thing. And it'd be really great. I know, Kirti, you've been talking about coming up to North County and doing some kind of offering dance or whatever up here, and which I selfishly would love to be able to dance with you twice a week and not have to travel so far, because I do travel a ways. And but it would be really fun to get us all together and again do that mind, body, and spirit, and just get people together and learn and play and laugh and teach and see what we can create. And then once fall comes around, we're all off and running on what our big priorities are. So that's my vision for the summer. So definitely looking forward to getting together with the two of you and nailing that down, getting clear on that. It's Mercury retrograde. We can't talk too much about it right now because it's just like everything's shifty and whatever else. But we're gonna, once we come into June, it'll be like nailed down. And of course, I want to bring in the nutrition and health piece. Yeah, I feel like the cellular health allows the energy to sink in. So I'm really passionate about that.
100%. I mean, you got a chance to talk to Master Yao. He's a big component of cellular health.
Oh yeah, I had no idea until I talked to him on the phone how we're very aligned as far as that research and science and the cellular health. I had no idea that he was all into that. I mean, it makes sense because of the work he's doing, but I just didn't know. So yeah, really excited and hoping that he and I were also trying to find a time for him to come on. So I'm looking forward to that next season.
Yeah, that's great. Wow, that's
Maybe
big.
he'll be
deal.
our season opener. I don't know. We'll
Yeah,
see what
that's
schedule's
cool.
like. That would be a big honor and treat. I think I've been talking about him the last 3 episodes or 4 episodes. Every episode his name has come up. But also want to acknowledge the 2 of you who've been doing this work. I know we like to give credit to our mentors and the people who have influenced us so much, but we're kind of like the I don't want to use the word middle age, but whatever our generation, we're right in the middle, like we're ripe. We're the most ripe fruit right now. Like, it's like things are just kind of like we got this work behind our backs, and we've been in the trenches and we've arrived. So now it's time to fly. And I really appreciate, the personal growth that you both have done, that you bring into your professional work, and the way you show up so authentic. And just, I see you, I know you personally. I see you both doing the work. It's really inspiring, really, really inspiring. It's nice to see.
Same. Feel the same for you, Natasha.
Yeah, no, this platform that you've created, and I know, keep pushing with it, and the ups and downs. I especially to do it consistently like we do. And this is the 2nd season.
Yeah.
So definitely just appreciate you making room for us, and through time and space. This is out here. You got it on YouTube. You got it on other different platforms for people. 2 years from now might watch this.
Yeah.
And so just really appreciate you. Keeping consistent and pushing with it. Goddess vibrations, right? That is a frequency. That is a vibration to be in that frequency. So thank you.
And just like the sensual emotional exchange, there's no agenda here except to be, a healing space. And it certainly has been for me. To just, every conversation, every episode, I feel a little bit more healed. So thank you for your participation. You both have been repeat. Kirti's my co-host every other week, and you've been a repeat guest show. So I really appreciate you both. And also, I don't know if a lot of people know this, Shophar, but you've fed me a lot of guests. So you've kind of been a big man behind the curtain, I think, with this show too, by connecting me.
The wizard.
So you might be kind of quiet sometimes, but mighty. And so I appreciate the caliber of folks that you've connected me with, that have come on the show and just had some amazing things to say as well. And just alternative, I don't want to say alternative perspectives, but non-dominant perspectives outside of the mainstream stuff, and which is what I've always been fascinated in, bringing out and hearing more about. All right, well, we've got a 6 a.m. Morning sadhana, so I guess it's time to wrap it up. This is the season finale of Goddess Vibrations. We'll be coming back in August with something new, something fresh, something. We'll see what that is. Have a great summer, everyone. Come and see us in San Diego and North County, San Diego. We'll be getting together, so make sure you follow, go to the website, get connected somehow, so get on our newsletters. I'm at natashadwina.com. We got dillsculture.com. We got foshoenergywork.com. Yeah, did I say that? Yeah, that's right. Okay, I got them all memorized now. So come and find us, get on our newsletters so that you know what's happening. There's going to be a lot of fun things happening. And thank you all for watching, supporting. You got a whole library to binge watch this summer, and we will see you soon. Good night, everyone.
Oneness, y'all.
Love ya.